New Nintendo GameCube controller not compatible with Switch 2 games, just GameCube classics. Now that makes sense. That has been how they've treated. I forget which controller. I think it's the NES controllers that slide into the things on the side. They don't let them slide into the side anymore. Like they're just straight up. Like they'll be wireless or something like that. They don't do it the same way they did the NES controllers. But let's read this for just a second. It's come to the Nintendo community's attention that the new Nintendo GameCube controller set to launch with the Switch 2 is only usable, with the limited collection of classic GameCube titles via Nintendo Switch Online. A cool bonus during the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct was the announcement of GameCube integration for Switch Online. Nintendo's library of retro games is growing even more thanks to GameCube additions. Legendary properties including Pokemon Stadium and Super Mario Sunshine will make up the Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack. A line of official Nintendo GameCube controllers are coming too, featuring the new C button. But if you're looking to grab this super special controller, take heed of its limited capabilities. By the way, this is news to me based off of my conversation with Nintendo support. The classic Nintendo GameCube games are coming to Nintendo Switch 2 in an explainer of the new GameCube expansion features. We also get treated to a look at the new GameCube controller, but a small print message toward the end is easily missed. Okay, I guess I'm gonna cue that up here in the background, and we will do that one live. Sorry, I'll just flat out say my big questions with this when I set out to find out what was going on was looking at the compatibility list on Nintendo Switch controllers versus the Nintendo Switch 2. I'll just flat out tell you the Nintendo Switch 2 Pro controller does not work on the Nintendo Switch. The Nintendo Switch Pro controller works on both, and you will be missing the C button and the G, L, and GR buttons on the back of the Switch. So if I were practical, if I was a parent, I'd go for the Nintendo Switch Pro controller that can be used on either system. Because if you've got one friend who's the little rich kid who has the Nintendo Switch 2, you don't necessarily want to buy a Nintendo Switch 2 Pro controller so that you can play with the one kid. You would want to buy a Pro controller from the Switch 1 so he can play with all the kids.
Jonas, that's a great point. And I feel so good for those kids because now they don't have to grow up with the Mad Catz controllers anymore. They have options.
I hate those Mad Catz. Speaking of Mad Catz, welcome, Marvin the Movie Monster.
Meow.
So in my conversation with Nintendo, I got them to establish, Nintendo Switch 2 Pro controller will not work. However, when I asked them specifically about the Nintendo GameCube controller with the C button, I don't think they put GL and GR buttons on the back. They said, yes, it will work with the Nintendo Switch, but it will only function, it'll pair as if it's just a regular USB controller.
Oh, that's interesting.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I feel like it's contradictory to what we're probably about to see if we take a look at this video right here. Let's take a look.
Please.
All right, just have to point out, possibly the best startup sound on a Nintendo system. Maybe.
Yes.
Maybe.
Easily.
I think it's right up there with the Roku opening.
Top tier of them all, though, is PlayStation 1. Just saying.
Yes.
Maybe. Although the Game Boy ones are pretty amazing.
I was going to say that
Xbox
the best
was pretty explosive.
I just want to say the best intro for a game company is Sega.
Yep.
True.
Yep.
Nintendo Switch Online Plus expansion pack will be getting a new classic game library exclusive to Nintendo.
I also feel like that's kind of cheating because they use the Super Mario World coin sound on that. Okay,
no, that was Sunshine.
We're looking for fine print here. Was that Sunshine? Nintendo Switch Online Classic game libraries are being renamed to Nintendo Classics. Okay, that's fair.
Nintendo Switch 2, Nintendo GameCube.
How do they always get a voice from a guy that sounds like he's in puberty?
Redmond, that's all I have to say about that.
Originally released in 2002. Here are the titles that will be available at launch. A Legend of Zelda game that looks like a...
Okay, we're going to skip ahead a little bit because we've already seen this. Wind Waker, I'm glad it's coming. It's better on the Wii U.
Soul Calibur 2.
Soul Calibur with Link. Exciting. F-Zero GX, which is harder than you guys remember. Just going to point that out. Game chat
Closest
integration.
Thing we'll get to an F-Zero on the Switch too.
And the one that I'm really excited about is over here, Chibi Robo. I haven't gotten to play that in so long. I'm kind of surprised that Super Mario Sunshine is coming, considering that it was in the 3D classics. Now they're actually talking about the controller, so we'll run it back.
And a dedicated controller designed after the original GameCube controller will also be released. It can connect wirelessly and also has a C button to quickly access game chat. The Nintendo GameCube.
So is it the fact? Oh, wow. It is up here, and it's been added. This was only on the Nintendo UK channel because I was looking for fine print everywhere. The controller is only compatible with Nintendo GameCube, Nintendo Classics. Okay, well, not buying that thing. I'm going with my PowerA wireless GameCube controller for yet another system.
So what would be the point of using it with the Switch then if it's only for the GameCube games? Because I thought the GameCube games were only on Switch too.
Well, you can't use it for any of the, even if you've got, let's say you've got Super Mario Sunshine on Super Mario 3D All-Stars, and you wanted to play Super Mario Sunshine on the Nintendo Switch, so you put that in your Nintendo Switch 2, and you put that cartridge in there, you can't use this GameCube controller in order to play Super Mario Sunshine in the upgraded version. You can only play it on the Nintendo Switch online version.
Right, but isn't that only for Nintendo Switch 2? Because they told you that this controller could be used with Nintendo Switch, right?
Right, for USB. So I agree. So here's my theory is that Nintendo support is fumbling around in the dark doing the best they can, and they looked up a random GameCube controller and they were like, oh, well, here's the information on that. So they sent it back and they said, yeah, it'll work in this way. I think the Nintendo support people are wrong. I would be more likely to go with this, which has been checked by legal for Nintendo. Man, it is super tiny print. I don't even know if that is going to show up on the live stream. Yeah, it won't because it gets covered up here. Man, that is teeny tiny print. Nintendo, come on, man. There is no reason that all of those buttons can't just be usable on any other game. You even added extra buttons on. You added a ZL button to go next to the Z button. Why does Nintendo do this?
I wonder if they're not going to produce a lot of these, because if they're saying right here in the fine print that this is only compatible with the GameCube stuff they're putting on Switch, that's probably going to be only a certain size of the market. That's probably going to be more of those that were nostalgic for GameCube. I could be wrong with the young up-and-coming Nintendo fans, who see Luigi's Mansion or something covered by their favorite streamer on YouTube and they want to play the game themselves. That's a part of the fun of timeless classics. But if it's so short on compatibility, I don't see the company pouring in, eons and eons of production into these controllers if you only get like a minuscule amount of the overall system's lifespan. Like, this is concerning.
How many are going to know that, though, when they walk into their GameStop, their game floor, and they go, oh, look, there's the controller I used when I was a kid, and it says it will work on the Switch, too. And they get it, and they get it home, and they're like, why isn't this thing working? I'm looking at the box, I'm looking at the instruction manual, only works with GameCube. But I don't even have the GameCube. I don't even have the Game Plus library. I don't have none of that. And then they've got a controller that doesn't work for anything but something that they would have to pay extra for.
So this is a fancy collector's item that is mostly going to sit on the shelf. Because I think the kind of person who would buy this is also the kind of person who probably still owns a GameCube. The only other question I had on this controller that I could not get answered anywhere, and even the hands-on stuff people are forgetting, the analog triggers on a Nintendo GameCube function very differently than the current redone GameCube controllers. I think there was like 256 different degrees of pressure that you could put on those triggers. They were like a gas pedal, and that is not there in the current remakes of this controller. So like the PowerA wireless, which is the one that I love to use, and when I play Smash Brothers with the kids, I always end up going for that controller because it's perfect. When you say the word ergonomic, it is like the case study for ergonomic controllers. It's a work of art, this bizarre little controller that we made fun of back in the day. But it is not the same. And the only thing that might convince me here is if I knew that they were actually going to be releasing a lot of GameCube Nintendo classics, and it also had those analogs. And even then, I got the Wavebird back here, and I've got my Nintendo GameCube with the Game Boy player with the disc. I've put a little too much money into getting that Game Boy player disc. I'm just going to do that. Well, I don't see the reason for doing something like this. I mean, I'll play Chibi Robo, but I'll just play it with the wrong controller.
Not to mention, Jonas, they came out as far back as Wii U era. They had the connector that lets you plug in the GameCube controller to the Wii U, and later I believe it was still compatible with the Nintendo Switch, to where you had like a USB adapter to where you could use the OG controllers for the new system. I don't know if that'll work for Switch 2 or not.
It does.
But
It does. I checked the compatibility list. It's on the things that will work because it's USB.
perfect. Yeah. If I could just follow up to something Loki said, how much maybe better would it have been if instead, because I just think that could be just a horrible scenario. And the sad thing is, it's going to happen to people if this is the case. Wouldn't it be kind of nice if instead of, this normal classy Nintendo red box, instead they made like a little bit bigger, and they instead put a ton of art from some of your favorite games on it, and you really hit home that this is for GameCube stuff that you can play on Switch. Maybe even include like a little card that is the Nintendo Switch, membership program, so that way when you get it out of the box, you're like, oh, I this isn't gonna work for my games, but hey, I can still, put in the code because it's 2025, and I can still experience these games. I feel like this is
but they've done the opposite
going to happen.
But they've done the opposite. They said you can't even buy it unless you are registered and also have Nintendo Switch Online with expansion pack. And it's only going to be available through, even though they're advertising it to everybody else.
I wish that the controllers worked on the consoles there.
Me too.
Swing and a miss for Nintendo.
I wish my controller was a controller.